Good afternoon, everybody. DMGeezerjim here, continuing along with our classic module review. I'm going to finish out the Against the Giant series today. We're looking at G3 from the G1 through 3 module series, which would be Hall of the Fire Giant King. As usual for this series, we'll be looking at the original Hall of Fire Giant King in comparison with the 5th edition publication in Tales from the Yawning Portal. Real quick, this is the third part of the series. Before I go too far along, yes, this is GDQ, Giant's Drow Queen. G3 against the Hall of the Fire Giant King would lead your party into the Dark Elves and continue their journey into descent into depths of the earth, Vault of the Drow, and ultimately Queen of the Demon Web Pits. Those have already been reviewed, so we're not stressed about too much. This will probably be a little bit different than my previous two reviews because I just don't want to repeat myself a ton. So let me go ahead and get the repetitions done before I go too far. Hey, man, thanks for being here. Likes, follows, subscribes, comments, questions, anything. Feel free to use that comment box down there. Let me know what you think, how I'm doing, if there's something that you'd like to see more of, less of, different of. Happy to do it. I appreciate a lot of the feedback I've gotten. I appreciate all the feedback I've gotten. A lot of it's kind of helping me tailor how to do these videos and give me some other subject matters that I'll be getting into soon. So first and foremost, thank you for your time. Those of you guys have been commenting, I really appreciate the feedback. It's helped me kind of get a game plan for the next couple series of videos. So with that being said, likes, follows, subscribes, comments, all of that. Join me over on Twitch Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central, U.S. Central Time. Same tag. You can join me for some live chats about some of the stuff that I'm streaming here on YouTube. Against Giants, G1 through 3. Let me get the repetitions out of the way first, just because I save everyone a little bit of time. The same challenges that we had with Frost Giants, with Hill Giants, not as much with Hill Giants, but something with Frost Giants, is still a factor here. We have a fortress, a dungeon, a compound that has been drawn that is the inhabitation of giants, but it is not necessarily giant-sized. Now, I know back in the day, we're looking at these hallways, we're going, well, that's a big hallway. This looks big enough for giants compared to what we used to use. First edition was primarily Theater of the Mind. There wasn't necessarily a bunch of required metrics that went with token size, miniature bases, and things like that. 5th edition, 4th, 5th edition, especially 5th, screw 4th, that's a big factor is your mapping, is your 5-foot grid system. So a lot of the order of battle, the amount of giants that were listed in the 1st edition, they just simply do not work for 5th edition in regards to the spacing. We have to acknowledge that straight up front. That's been a thing for all 3 of the modules, G1, G2, and G3, whether it's the Tales from the Yawning Portal side or the original side. There wasn't a lot of consideration given to the size of the occupants. This is a giant fort, man. Giant caves, giant halls, but we're sitting here with 5-foot and 10-foot wide openings. Maybe, if we get lucky, there's a 20-foot wide hallway. Okay. So yeah, the same problem is still apparent in G3 that we discovered in G1 and 2. The size of the map, the size of the rooms just is not conducive to allow giants to effectively defend their home. Save maybe 1, 2, 3 locations that I'm seeing here, you won't be able to get 2 giants side by side in any of the hallways except for room number 2. Everything else is a 20-foot wide. A 5th edition giant is going to take up 15 feet, 3 square by 3 square, 15 square foot on their token base in a battle map. So if you have a 20-foot wide hallway, 2 giants can't get past each other. 2 giants can't stand next to each other. So without fail, in that scenario, our players are always going to have the advantage against the giants, which might be a little bit fair because I guess fighting 4 giants at the same time can be challenged. But guess what? You're walking into a giant fort. You should expect to fight 4 giants at the same time. Unfortunately, the map design, save a few locations, does not give you, the Dungeon Master, the opportunity to execute a large-scale defense, an organized defense. So let's just get that ugly thing out of the way. If you want this to be a challenging map, you probably need to, once again, rescale it. Take the size that's given, 1 square equals 10 foot. Maybe you make that 1 square equals 10 yards, 1 square equals 30 feet. That way you can actually fit giants and a lot of giants into the space. That's a huge mapping project if you choose to do that with your VTT. But it's certainly an option if you want to allow the giants an opportunity to defend themselves effectively on their home turf. So let's get to it. Let's get the ugly out of the way. The first major change in Halls of the Fire Giant King is an emphasis on your party having a home base. There's mention of it in Steadying the Hill Giant. There's mention of it in the Frost Giant, but it's definitely emphasized as part of the Halls of the Fire Giant King. Mainly that your party's not going to be able to go in here and do this in one go. They're going to need multiple long rests, a few short rests on top of it. And they just can't plop down in the living room of the Fire Giant King and set up a long camp and not expect to get disturbed. If your party's foolish enough to try to do a long rest within their fortress, make sure you disturb them, give them that level of exhaustion, and when they try it tomorrow, give them that second level of exhaustion with no healing and no spell slots. They'll get the point pretty quick. They have to execute a retreat to a safe space to take any sort of long rest. Two factors. Number one, that allows you to take the fight away from the fortress if your party is not smart about it, if they're not careful about covering their tracks as they go from their hidey hole, from their safe space back to the Fire Giants. The Fire Giants can ambush them at their safe space. So that's the first thing to set up. It's up to the players to find a spot, and it's up to the players to make sure that it remains hidden and safe. We just need to provide a couple locations within a few miles of the mountain proper of the Fire Giant Fort, or the Frost Giant Rift, or the Hill Giant Fort. All three are the same basic idea. So, but it's heavily emphasized in G3. Your party will be making multiple excursions to clear out this fortress. First thing that I want to get out of the way, make sure that you have a area within range that your party can fortify, sneak off to, and all that. But also make sure that they're being intelligent about going to and from. If they walk around with 5 bags of loot each and dragging that shit across the plains back to their home, it's going to be an easy trail to find. And you definitely have the obligation at this level of play to follow them home and beat the snot out of them, take their gold and go back. This is a mid-level, high-level adventure, 10th level plus. Your players should have the experience. You should have the knowledge at this point to keep it challenging and to make your players work for what they're getting. Okay. So one of the major design flaws, I don't want to say flaw, something to keep in mind as you set this adventure up. Let's just go a couple more out-of-character things. Out of frame for running the adventure, I should say. Number one, we're establishing that your party is making multiple forays into the fortress. What that means is the giants should be responding in kind, changing up their defenses, posting guards, things like that. So I made the recommendation in Hill Giants. I made the recommendation in Frost Giants. I would definitely say it's a requirement for Fire Giants. Build a roster, build an order of battle, know how many giants are here, know roughly where they're starting, and be able to move them around the fortress as dictated, okay? The starting locations for each of your clusters of bad guys, each room, each enemy is certainly posted. And if by some miracle of a chance your party's able to come in through door 1 and clear out through door 25 without needing a long rest or a short rest or anything, number one, you probably did something wrong or your party's way too powerful for this adventure. But regardless of that, let's say they made it into 3, maybe 4, and then they had to retreat. I need to know that the giants that are up in room 25 are how many they are and what, so I can have them moving around in patrols. Maybe I move one of the giants from 19 and one of them to 22 and post them as guards at the doorway number 1 when the party first tries to re-enter. Because this is an adventure designed around multiple forays, multiple attacks, you as the Dungeon Master need to be prepared for multiple different defenses. The first time the party walks in, kicks in the door, does their thing, yeah, okay, the giants are caught a little bit unaware, maybe not prepared, and what's listed on the adventure key is enough. But second, third, fourth trip, you have three levels worth of fire giants and their defenders to move around within the fort to execute defenses. Make sure you're setting up ballistae. Make sure you have piles of rocks clustered here and there. So any giant defenders have easy access to 5 or 6 bulges to start chunking. Set up firing galleries for your giants. Make sure that you're giving them the opportunity to defend, especially if the party leaves and comes back. Okay, so let's get to the meat. Like I said, this won't be a super long review because a lot of the flaws, a lot of the challenges here are still similar to G1 and G2. I don't want to spend a bunch of time rehashing what we already know. But I will pause periodically to remind you space is still an issue, scale is still an issue. But let's get into it. The first thing that your party is, they're going to come into the front doors, big old huge steel doors that they'll have to struggle to open. They'll walk past a small guard post of a guy at A, couple Ettins at 2, and once they get into area 2 into area 3, let me just bring this up on the main screen here. Sorry. No, come on, help a brother out. Be cooperative. So this is important to understand before you roll a single die. When your party is coming into this adventure, location 1 is the front door, location 2 is the grand hall, location 3 is the throne room of King Snor. Your party is running into the BBEG within the first 2 or 3 encounters of walking into the door. Unless they somehow hang a left and go off to the side passage, they're going to run into King Snor right off the bat. This poses a couple problems. Mainly, number 1, if your party is able to walk up to the throne and kick King Snor's ass, they killed the BBEG in the first 30 minutes of the adventure, the entire discipline of the giant fort breaks down. Which, you know, be prepared for. Players be players. They could get sneaky on you. So if King Snor is killed at location 3 when they first meet him, the entire defense paradigm breaks down. Once they kill them, the fortress is going to chaos. It'll be very dangerous. But once the party retreats and comes back, it might be near desolate. All the giants formed up teams, grabbed what they could, and hauled ass. Few might still be around saying, well, the king's gone, I'll make this into my house. But, so the big problem here is right out the gate, your party can walk up to the BBEG and kick him in the shin and end the adventure. Okay. Simple thing to do is when the party is, when your enemies are aware of your party's presence, which should be between 1 and 2, the king sends his guards forward to attack instead of waiting for the party to walk up to him on the throne and initiate the attack. Send his 4 guardians out there and then have him follow them up to this point, and then he'll go north into the Grand Hall, raising the alarm. Okay? I highly recommend executing the first attack in this method. Number 1, we're protecting our asset. We're getting the BBG out of the room. We're moving him into the fortress. Our players can't end it all on the first strike. Secondly, we are informing our players through this action that this is intelligent. These are intelligent creatures. This is a fortified and defendable lair. So King Snor says, keep those, go deal with them, I'll get the boys. So within the first couple rounds, they should hear the bellows of King Snor calling out, intruders, invaders abound, arm yourselves, gird your loins, and destroy the interlopers, however you want to roll that out. Big, loud, ostentatious, and obvious, as King Snor disengages from the fight, if necessary. Disengage and head up the hallway. So now your party's got a matter of rounds to make a decision here. Whether they win this fight, which they should, and decide to chase the king down, or the fight goes a little bit long and some reinforcements start coming, your party should right now, at this point, know they fucked up. This was right when they realized that they made a mistake, because they're about to get hit with overwhelming forces. Caveats. The size of the tunnels is going to limit the giants to coming in one at a time. It is what it is. The size of the giants versus the size of the map is certainly going to limit how many reinforcements come in. But even if the giants can only get 3 of them in at a time, and then there's another 20 behind those guys, eventually your party's going to run out of resources fighting 3 at a time. Even though that favors them, they're going to have to beat a hasty retreat. That's what we're trying to enforce in them right out the gate. King Snor's ready. He's bad. He's going to go, I'm going to get my boys and we're going to stomp y'all's asses. Now it's time for y'all to head the hell out and come up with a plan. Okay? That's my personal opinion on the most important factor of that. After that, after the initial encounter with King Snor and King Snor not finding them, him going through the fortress to raise up the the reinforcements. So your party has been warned. These guys are fighting smart. That's why initially when I started the recording, I said, build an order of battle. Build yourself a spreadsheet, notebook, however you do it. So you know how many giants, how many ogres, how many ettins, how many gnolls, how many trolls are in this. And we got some ogre magi's, a lot of magic users in here as well. Plus the drow contingent. At this point, guys, prior to the first battle being, the first die being dropped, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you set up an order of battle. You've got 3 levels of a dungeon here, okay? Lots of different creatures through these 3 levels, but they're all acting in a unified front as long as King Snor is alive. We are here to defend our homes from the tiny interlopers. Be ready to destroy. So then as the players, once we've assembled the order of battle, the list of all of the stuff that's in here, as a dungeon master, every time they kill someone off, just pick one of them off and knock it off. But now you know how many people you have to defend this fort. You can remove the 3 of them from room 25 and put them over in hallway 2 as guards to start with, so on and so forth. So coordinating the number of creatures with the knowledge on the map will allow you to set up a defense. And this has to be an effective defense. It could be as simple as the giants do a fighting retreat. They throw a boulder, they run down the hall. They throw a boulder, they run down the hall. And they're leading the party round around in merry-go-rounds around this area 13, 14, 12. They go through 2. They work the hall up to 24. They go counterclockwise back down this hall. Have some fun with it. Fight an active engagement. This is their home turf. Stash some extra guards in the hallway to room, that goes to the 5-6 complex. The moment the party enters, they come rushing out of the curtains and engage. This is now going to become an ambush defense situation if you've prepared. Okay, so that's the first thing. Really, I don't want to say the first thing. That's kind of the key to making this dungeon work. In order to make G3 work really well, you have to fight in the most intelligent way possible, in an organized defensive manner. The scope, the size, the amount of enemies are entirely too large for a party to handle this in a one-go foray. They're going to be forced into short resting. They're going to be forced into retreating and long resting. The moment they go to the first long rest, your entire adventure, your encounter keys change. They really shouldn't mean anything anymore because the monsters are redistributing through the lair, preparing for a defense. So you want to read the manual. You want to go through your adventure key. You want to know who's where from the initial setup. But at that point, it's just basic indications. Now, again, emphasis on the fact that the 5th edition is even easier than the third G3 according to Storm King's Thunder. The Yawning Portal version of G3 is even easier in comparison to the G3 original than the G2 conversions were. The Steadying the Hill Giant is probably the closest to the challenge from the simple fact that they maintain a large amount of creatures. Even if they substituted them for orcs and ogres, there's still a large volume. The volume is not represented in G2 and certainly not in G3. I would say we're sitting at about 30% of the creature count between G3 regular and G3 Tales from the Yawning Portal. That's a big difference. That's going to have a large impact on the difficulty of the adventure. That's going to have an impact on the forces that you have available to defend your dungeon. Lot of treasure. That's the other thing that I want to point out in here. Okay, before we get to the treasure, let's talk about the Dark Elves. These are Dark Elves. We're back in 1st edition, when almost all of them were multi-class. You'll likely have to do some homebrewing to keep the challenge rating of these Dark Elves in line with the rest of the dungeon. There should be a few very powerful Dark Elves, powerful enough to keep the giants in check. Powerful enough to tell the giants what to do without the giants going, oh, me smash little purple guy, you die. Which means a high CR dude, or chick, or whatever term you want to use. Your Dark Elves have to be stacked out. You're not going to find suitable replacements within 5th edition. You're going to have to go into some homebrewing. Whether you take a champion stat block and add a few spells, or if you want to take a evoker stat block and up the armor class and the hit points, you need to make sure you're doing some adjustments to reflect the difficulty of the Dark Elves, okay? Secondly, the Dark Elves will become an active part. You have 2 choices here, and it's going to be dependent on your campaign. If you're playing Storm Kings, if you're playing G1 through 3 as part of the GDQ series, you have to have the Dark Elves still available and interacting with the party up till the finale. Because that's the key. That's the key that gets them from this fortress to go in. Now, this is where logic breaks down. Logically, the Dark Elves are sitting here secretly plotting with the Giants. If the party comes in the front door, throws down, whoops some ass, leaves, by rights, the Dark Elves should pack up their shit and leave as well. They shouldn't leave any traces of their presence. They shouldn't leave any clues, which stops the GDQ series dead in their tracks, okay? So you have an obligation to make sure that the drow stay there to keep the adventure path moving. So make them part of the active defense, okay? The situations, the challenges that we're looking at here with giants taking up too much space can definitely be supplemented by smaller forces, the Dark Elves. We're not worried about space as much. So your group may have been used to fighting one giant in this 20-foot wide hallway because only one fit there. But when one giant's got 3 Dark Elves around it, the entire encounter changes. The entire difficulty changes. The scope, the breadth, the intensity of everything is ramped up as well. So use the Dark Elf presence as you see fit. Whether you're doing this as if you're doing this as one shot, they're just there. It's not a big deal. They can show up. They can fight the good fight. Your party's getting all their shit and they're going. If you're running this in a campaign, make sure that the Dark Elves presence is supporting the reasoning for the campaign. Make sure the presence of the Dark Elves is actually moving the campaign forward as well. Use them smart. Use them tactically. As smart and as tough as your giants are, your Dark Elves should be doubly so as well. Okay. Second thing that we talked about. Last thing that I really want to point out, there's a lot of treasure in this dungeon, man. There's a lot of treasure. And honestly, the 5th edition didn't reduce it by that much. You're still walking out, your party's still walking out here with hundreds of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of gold in cash, not even including magic items, potions, and ceramics, stuff like that. We're just talking cash and gems and jewelry. There's easily 120,000 gold here, okay? 6 pieces of jewelry of 1,000 or 4,000. Let's just put it at the minimum. One trunk is going to hold 6,000 gold pieces worth of jewelry in one chest. On and on and on. So, one shot, who cares? Who cares? We're playing a one shot. Have fun with it. Throw it in your bags. It doesn't matter. Campaigns, 2 things to look at. Number 1, if there's a continuation, does your party have the time or the logistics to handle this much treasure, getting it out and continuing on their mission? You can tease your party with this. If you're running the GDQ and the drow are just barely ahead of the party, look at all this money. It's going to take us a week to get this money out of here and get back here. Do we really have the time to do that? If we spend a week to 10 days transporting all this loot out of here and then returning here, the giants could be reinforced. The drow could be gone. The passage could be closed. On and on and on. So the plot line in the campaign is going to have a direct impact. And for me, that's a secret joy. My players see 150,000 gold laying around. They can't touch it because they have real important things to do. Well, look at all that gold. Well, if the world ends, what's gold mean? Damn it, fine. So you can play it from that standpoint. Or you can let them have the loot and let them walk out. But this is what you have to ask yourself, and this is what you really have to have your players ask. You just won the lotto. Are you ready to go back out and adventure and risk your ass? Or are you ready to retire? You got all of that money. You got enough money to buy a small kingdom, put up a keep on it, build a town, and pay everyone to live there for 10 years. Why are you still going adventuring? It's something that you need to keep in mind. Number 2, how is that much money going to impact your campaign world? If your players go in there, this isn't attached to the GDQ. This is a summation. This is the final point. They go in, they kill the fire giant king. The world is saved. At least this region is saved. Woohoo, high five. And they haul all of that money out of there. Is that going to impact your campaign world? Is the local town ready to absorb 200,000 gold? Is there a vendor within your frickin' world that can afford to buy that jewelry? Those are the kind of things that you want to keep in mind as you're planning it out. So, again, short adventure, one-off, one shot, That doesn't matter. That's for fun. Campaigns, that's a big deal. That kind of money, it can change a campaign. You know, if you have a greedy enough person, they can say, fuck this, I'm out, I quit. Which is great. I mean, that adds a lot to the plot. That adds a lot. What do you mean you quit? We got to go follow this cave in to this under. Why? We have enough money here to retire. We can buy a whole island in the Woolly Bay and not even care. Why? Those are role play moments and story beat moments that can be derivative. They can derive themselves from the adventure that you're having. Just the pile of loot, something like that. So, yeah. G3 against the Giants. It's a good adventure. The whole series is good, but there's some flaws, and the flaws get really obvious through a modern lens. If you're playing Theater of the Mind, if you're playing Free and Loose or an older edition, you have a little bit of wiggle room, but at the same time, let's keep things in perspective. Use some logic. This is one of the things I like pointing out that frustrates me about this particular dungeon. Okay, room 6 and room 7. Just as the last example of spacing and what you got to be prepared for and how to kind of manage things. Room 6 here is an illusion. A big-ass pile of rocks and rubble and dirt that's been has a powerful illusion on it cast upon it to make it look like this gigantic pile of gold, the huge dragon horde, and a red dragon perched atop it. The red dragon is actually an illusory gorgon. The idea is the party's going to come up to it, the gorgon's going to breathe, petrify him, and you want. The truth of the matter is this little bitty room here, room 7, which you're looking at 10, 20, 30, 40, 30 by 35-ish stomach-shaped room. There is a huge adult ancient red dragon and the loot of the fortress hidden in that small room. Okay, guys, a huge dragon's not going to fit in a 40-foot room for anything more than a nap. I don't like that encounter. I would definitely move the dragon out to 6 and let him fight out here with the giants assisting him. Why are we going to put a crappy-ass illusion in here and put the real dragon in a tiny-ass little bitty room that they ain't even got space to move, okay? You've taken away their flight. You've taken away their mobility. You're limiting them to a bite and a breath and maybe a couple claws. Bad dungeon design. Sorry, Mr. Gygax. I mean, let's be honest. I shouldn't say bad. We've learned a lot. We've grown a lot since then. What sounded like a really cool encounter on paper goes into an unplayable encounter on a tabletop. It just doesn't make sense. So there's a lot of situations like that. If your brain is tied to logic, there's a lot of failures in the G1, G2, G3 series for that. I look at that as opportunities, man. Cut the encounter, move some stuff around within the layer if you need to. Make it work for yourself. But above all else, I'm going to close out one last little thing here on my the 5th edition, and then we'll finish up. The 5th edition Tales from the Awning Portal, every single one of these was designed as a one-shot. They give you a little bit of information to add them into your adventure, but that's really about it. The 5th edition is even more stripped down in bare bones. There's no why whatsoever given. So yeah, it is a challenging dungeon to drop into your worlds from the simple fact that it requires a volcanic mountain range, okay? There's 2, 3 volcanoes officially within Forgotten Realms around the Sword Coast, which means you're going to default to putting this over by Mount Hot now. If you put this by Mount Hot now, why the fuck isn't Neverwinter doing something about this? This is a big-ass giant forest connected with some dark elves not 50 miles away from Neverwinter. Pay attention to your placement. Giants eat a lot. They loot a lot. They kill a lot. They fight a lot. The closer you have this fortress, or any of them, to civilization, the less likely that it's been successful without other people getting involved, okay? So when you're looking at placing it in your world, place it far enough away to where the military wouldn't have taken care of it to begin with, close enough to where you don't have to plan a mini campaign to get there. Remote enough to where it's not an existential threat to the world right now, but close enough to where the rumors and the reports that are coming in from the countryside are pointing at something big, okay? So placement is kind of a key thing. But if you're using it as a one-shot, man, placement is right here. Your party starts out in front of these big-ass stone doors and goes We're not worried about story. We're not worried about motivation. We're not worried about the why. We're not worried about what next. We're just playing a really cool adventure to go in and whoop some ass. And if that's the case, honestly, guys, if you're just looking at this as a one-shot, any of the three work perfectly fine. Any of the three are great just to go in there. Number one, they're not one-shots. None of them can be done in one session. None of them can be completed in one session. So look at it as a short adventure. With a non-campaign driven series, they stand fine on their own. If you're planning on running a full-blown campaign and at any sort of length, make sure that you're planning for the transitions between the hill and the frost and the fire. Make sure that you're planting the seeds in there. And above all, make sure that you fight this last stage very intelligently, okay? This is the summation of the 3-module series. This is a big chapel, a big set piece thing involving a lot of different creatures. Make sure that you've read it. Make sure that you've documented all of the creatures that are in here, and then throw away the adventure key. Because when your party makes the second, third, and fourth ventures in here, the giant at 24 should not still be sitting at 24. They should have moved around and gone into an active defense. So this is definitely a module, whatever version that you use, that's going to start out as a written module that's going to quickly transition and test your skills as a quote-unquote home brewer. You're going to need to manage the population of this dungeon through 3 levels in a completely fluid methodology. You need to be mobile. You need to keep the giants defending their home. So, therein lies the main challenge in doing this. The prep, it's a little bit of prep. There's not a lot of role play going on. There's not even a bunch of traps going on in this one. There's a few secret doors that you have to hide that your party might have to deal with. But above all else, G3, more than the other two, is a hack and slash, man. We're going in here, we're swinging our swords, we're casting our spells, we're kicking butt, taking names, and lots of loot along the way. It is only a challenge if you give the giants a chance. Let them reorganize their defenses. Let them move around within the lair. Set up some ballistae, set up some barricades that players have to crawl up, but it's chest high for a giant, that kind of thing. Turn this into a living battlefield fortress. And above all else, don't forget, if your party can run into King Snore right off the bat and kill him right off the bat, everything else breaks down. Be ready to move the king out of area 3 right away. Get him repositioned so this turns into a longer adventure. Cool? All right, guys. That's it. That's where we're going to close out. No need to go too far into this. Just use your brains, use the roster, turn this into a defensible fortress. But yeah, thank you for joining me. We're just finishing up G1 through 3. This was G3. Fire again. The Hall of the Fire Giant King, leading into the Descent into the Depths. Make it your own, man. Whatever map version you're using, whatever art you're using, make it your own. Make the creatures in here fight intelligently. Make the creatures in here reorganize, reposition for defense. Make it hurt. Make your party work for this win. Okay? But hey, thank you for joining me for this series. We'll be working on Planescape series, working on my Intro to DM series. Have a couple other ones that have been requested that are kind of in the works, and obviously I'll be continuing on with the classic module review. I think next up will be the Silver Anniversary Edition against the Giants, the Liberation of Joff, and I'm going to compare that to Storm King's Thunder. Forewarning, it'll be a little bit longer of a review, but it is what it is. But hey, whether you've been here for a few minutes, whether you've been here the whole time, thank you for sharing your time with me. Likes, follows, shares, subscribes, all that kind of cool stuff. More than that, comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want me to talk about some more. Let me know how you would do it. Ask me how I would do it. Happy to jump in the comments and share with you guys. But you guys be safe out there. Thank you.